you
bring
want
my
it
clients
to be
direct.
heard.
You just have a management opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to bring to the table the topic of two topics. One is that when we talk about consent, we're typically pointing our attention toward the receiver and the receiver only.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important to me that the giver listens to their consent. It's like, will you rub my shoulders right here? Will you give me a hug? The person receiving is asking for the thing. So you know that their consent is there, but you as the giver, do you want to give that massage? Do you want to give that hug? Do you want to do that flogging? Do you want to open that door? Do you want to give? And so that kind of ties into the second aspect I wanted to bring to the table, which is your own consent. Your consent, because when we talk about consent, we're very much looking outside of ourselves, and the thing that we betray ourselves the most in is our own yes and no. Mm-hmm. When I host classes and I bring up consent, the example I bring up is hugs or handshaking. Mm-hmm. How many people in the room have ever given a hug or shaken a hand reluctantly, and you actually didn't want to be touching that person, or you didn't want that person to touch you? It's like everybody in the room raises their hand. We do it to our children. Give them a hug. Stop being rude. Give grandma a hug. Let grandma hug you. Show them that you love them. So we're taught from a very young age that our yes and no doesn't matter. It's overruled by societal norms and what's expected of us. And so it's really important to me to bring into the consent conversation your own consent, your own voice, your own body. And as Anne said, it's something she's really working on now, is like listening to your own body's yes or no.
Yeah. And I think the most important part of that, or one really important part of that, because you talked about fluid consent, lady, that also it's really important to know that once you've said yes, as a giver, also it can become a no. Yeah. Or as a receiver, that is fluidity as well, to know that you always have a no available. You can always renegotiate an agreement. You can always say, you know what, this isn't working for me anymore.
Yeah. I think with my lover, we do a lot of we're allowed to change our minds, and we're allowed to kind of be like, oh yeah, I'm sorry, because sometimes it's like, but you said you wanted this. And then there's an accusation for why you changed your mind. And that's when you may stay in a yes or a no that you don't really want. So a lot of room to change your mind at any time, and for no one to take that as a personal attack. I don't want to personally attack you. I just don't want to touch you anymore.
Yeah, and I'm a firm believer that in order to be in integrity in any consent conversation, you need to be in integrity with yourself first and foremost. So our people pleaseriness comes along, and we're like, oh, listening for what they want. We really want to please them. We really want them to like us. We really, are in this anticipation of like other people's needs, and we lose our attention on our own selves. So my invitation is for all of us to notice where and when we're basing our answer, our yes or no, off of that of the other, the person we want to please, or the person we want to impress, or the person that we want to like us or accept us, and really pay attention first and foremost, because you're out of integrity in any consent conversation if you're not listening to yourself first, regardless of what the other person wants. And that brings it to the last point, which is, it doesn't matter if you're a yes or a no. Like if someone's a yes to something, it doesn't oblige anyone to fulfill that. Mm-hmm. If you're a yes to something, if you want something, it doesn't oblige anyone to fulfill that. And that's another thing that I think we get convoluted. And when I'm working with clients, they're afraid to say yes because they've treated themselves as obliged to fulfill other people's yeses when they haven't wanted to. And if you notice that you've done that, it might be one of the reasons why you're not speaking up for yourself or asking for the things that you want, because you don't want anybody to feel the way that you feel when you aren't a yes to someone's yes, but you do it anyway.
Mm-hmm. Really good. And also just gentleness with ourselves, about the people pleasing. Something you said sparked that too, Monica Jane, about religious background, that the people pleasing probably was taught to us non-consensually. And we have swallowed it whole, along with lots of shame about sexuality. And so just when that comes up, to know that that is something that may be in us, and that rather than trying to like shove it away or shame it, to love it and integrate it in any way you can. But that's Go ahead.
I love that you're saying this right now, because I just had like 5 cringy flashbacks growing up Catholic to where we get touched in ways that we don't want to, or we have to stick our hand in that water that everybody else puts their hand in at the front of the church and do the sign of the cross.
Totally.
And we have to eat that. I remember when they changed it. They changed it during my childhood. I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and they changed it in my childhood, where you could take the host, the little bread circle thingy, from the priest and put it in your own mouth. But it wasn't that way. I remember it was like a big deal. They changed that, and that girls could be altar boys at the same time. So basically you had to be fed by someone else if you wanted the body of Christ. Ugh,
Right.
my body feels so gross.
I know.
Remembering all of the religious rituals that involved someone else's body and my body. And I actually was a no, like, ugh.
Right. Or that was trained into my body. I'm 57. I still, if I'm in a church and I walk across in front of the altar, I have to physically stop myself from doing the sign of the cross. I know. Yeah.
So
I did not ask for that.
I want to bring to awareness also, for me, Edward is raising his hand. Put it in the chat, Edward, if you could. Oh, he says, consent education. Joe said consent education starts way before sex education. And I want to just point that out. For me, I see a lot, not only as a sexuality coach, but just a coach in general, that people aren't aware of their consent in everyday situations. And I think that those are really safe places to start, or safer places sometimes to start, to really get your feet underneath you and you're grounding into being able to express your consent. And to explore where you might be violating others' consent. Are you rushing in to fix other people's problems when they don't necessarily want it? Have you asked if people want your opinions? There's so many ways where we can play with this awareness before we even get to the place that is often more difficult for a lot of people, which is in their sexual relationships.
And also delay consent. Like, you may have a delay in knowing that you were not a yes. And like, it's not like, it's not automatic. And then you beat yourself up because some things are so ingrained and so conditioned. Sometimes I don't always have like an immediate reaction to knowing myself. Like, I think I'm being authentic, and then like 5 minutes later, I'm like, I think I really wanted that. And then there's, as coaches, and even like, oh, we know this and we learn this and we talk about it. It happens to everyone. Like, so anyways, always coming back to compassion, because it can be traumatic to say, I consented to that, but I didn't really want that. I changed my mind, blah, blah, blah. So,
So part of what I'm working on in my practice of congruence and integrity is to slow down before I say yes. And wait and see what my body wants. And that if I don't know, or I can't find out soon enough for the other person, I'm a no.
I'm erring on the side of no. If it's not a yes, it's a no. And that's another hard thing for us, is to say no to other people.
Hard for people pleasers. Yeah.
To say no, or to say, I need some time to decide.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's so hard. So just really quickly, like the other day, maybe like 12 days ago, something like that, I was in the street and a homeless person reached out for a hug. Like, I went to give money and he just opened his arms. And this to me meant hug, I need to accept. And I took it. And it's COVID. And I have to say, in the moment, it was just like, oh, you need a hug? I will give you a hug. And then after I was like, maybe that was not such a good idea. But somehow some gestures, like, you automatically just react to them like non-verbally. So
Mhm.
yeah, I'm fine. I feel great. But that happened, and it kind of, after I was like, oh, that happened.
Mhm.
That you just brought up a piece that is no can come in the form, like it doesn't have to be verbal. And that I think that's something that we miss is
Like the
she didn't say no, he didn't say no. And it's like energetically, body posture, tone, no can come in many forms. And so can yes for that matter. So really,
Yeah. And if you're not sure, to ask.
Mhm.
Was that a no?
Even with yourself, like you don't hear
Right.
yourself saying no, but you feel it. You feel it in your body. You feel that contraction. You feel the retreat.
the
You feel the
hesitation.
desire to look down or cross your arms or put your hands in front of your crotch is one of the telltale